Hello, I'm Jashikins, and welcome to another episode of Jash Reads. Finally, I am back to doing my dramatic reading of Eragon by Christopher Polini, and I took the cover from the book and put it up there, so I'm really worried that somehow this episode is going to fall down. And before I begin reading, since this is September 11th, and I am a US citizen, I just want to, you know, take this moment to say my thoughts and prayers go out to the survivors, people who lost someone, just everyone that was affected by this stay back in 2001. And especially okay, and especially the Muslims who, after the whole attack happened, people started thinking all the Muslims were terrorists. So that was not that must have been just extremely hard for them, and Islamophobia is still going on to this day. So thoughts and prayers. And I should have really written that out as a script, because me ad-libbing does not work out well, as we have just found out right now again. I was thinking over my head for the past 2 or 3 hours of what I'd say, and look I messed it up. But so today in Eragon, we're going to start the next chapter, but we're not going to finish it. We're going to split it up into 2 parts to make it easier on me. So let's get started. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, let's put the bookmark. And this is a bookmark. Yeah, any book reader will tell you we use any and all things as bookmarks except actual bookmarks. Okay. Awakening. The dragon was no longer than his forearm, yet it was dignified and noble. Its scales were deep sapphire blue, the same color as the stone. But not a stone, he realized, an egg. The dragon fanned its wings. They were what had made it appear so contorted. The wings were several times larger than its body and ribbed with thin fingers of bone that extended from the wing's front edge, forming a line of widely spaced talons. The dragon's head was roughly triangular. 2 diminutive white fangs curved down out of its upper jaw. They looked very sharp. Its claws were also white, like polished ivory, and slightly serrated on the inside curve. A line of small spikes ran down the creature's spine from the base of its head to the tip of its tail. A hollow where its neck and shoulders joined created a larger than normal gap between the spikes. Eragon shifted slightly, and the dragon's head snapped around. Hard, ice blue eyes fixed on him. He kept very still. It might be a formidable enemy if it decided to attack. The dragon lost interest in Eragon and awkwardly explored the room, squealing as it bumped into a wall or furniture. With a flutter of wings, it leapt onto the bed and crawled to his pillow, squeaking. Its mouth was open pitifully, like a young bird's, displaying rows of pointed teeth. Eragon sat cautiously on the end of the bed. The dragon smelled his hand, nibbled his sleeve. He pulled his arm back. A smile tugged at Aragon's lips as he looked at the small creature. Tentatively, he reached out with his right hand and touched its flank. A blast of icy energy surged into his hand and raced up his arm, burning in his veins like liquid fire. He fell back with a wild cry. An iron clang filled his ears, and he heard a soundless scream of rage. Every part of his body sheared with pain. He struggled to move, but was unable to. After what seemed like hours, warmth seeped back into his limbs, leaving them tingling. Shivering uncontrollably, he pushed himself upright. His hand was numb, his fingers paralyzed. Alarmed, he watched as the middle of his palm shimmered and formed a diffused white oval. Skin itched and burned like a spider bite. His heart pounded frantically. Eragon blinked, trying to understand what had occurred. Something brushed against his consciousness, like a finger trailing over his skin. He felt it again, but this time it solidified into a tendril of thought through which he could feel a growing curiosity. It was as if an invisible wall surrounding his thoughts had fallen away, and he was now free to reach out with his mind. He was afraid that without anything to hold him back, he would float out of his body and be unable to return, becoming a spirit of the other. Scared, he pulled away from the contact. The new sense vanished as if he had closed his eyes. He glared suspiciously at the motionless dragon. A scaly leg scraped against his side, and he jerked back. But the energy did not shock him again. Puzzled, he rubbed the dragon's head with his right hand. A light tingling ran up his arm. The dragon nuzzled him, arching its back like a cat. He slid a finger over its thin wing membranes. They felt like old parchment, velvety and warm, but still slightly damp. Hundreds of slender veins pulsed through them. Again, the tendril touched his mind. But this time, instead of curiosity, he sensed an overpowering, ravenous hunger. He caught up with a sigh. This was a dangerous animal. Of that he was sure. Yet it seemed so helpless, crawling on his bed. He could only wonder if there was any harm in keeping it. The dragon wailed in a reedy tone as it looked for food. Eragon quickly scratched its head to keep me from turning the page easily. Anyways, back. Eragon quickly scratched its head to keep it quiet. I'll think about this later, he decided, and left the room, carefully closing the door. Returning with 2 strips of dried meat, he found the dragon sitting on the windowsill, watching the moon. He cut the meat into small squares and offered one to the dragon. It smelled the square cautiously, then jabbed its head forward like a snake and snatched the meat from his fingers, swallowing it whole with a peculiar jerk. The dragon prodded Eragon's hand for more food. He fed it, careful to keep his fingers out of the way. By the time there was only 1 square left, the dragon's belly was bulging. He proffered the last piece. The dragon considered it for a moment, then lazily snapped it up. Done eating, it crawled onto his arm and curled against his chest. Then it snorted, a puff of dark smoke rising from its nostrils. Eragon looked at it with wonder. Just when he thought the dragon was asleep, a low humming came from its vibrating throat. Gently, he carried it to the bed and set it by his pillow. The dragon, eyes closed, wrapped its tail around the bedpost contentedly. Eragon lay next to it, flexing his hand in the near darkness. He faced a painful dilemma. By racing a dragon, he could become a rider. Myths and stories about riders were treasured, and being one would automatically place him among those legends. However, if the Empire discovered the dragon, he and his family would be put to death unless he joined the king. No one could or would help them. The simplest solution was just to kill the dragon. But the idea was repugnant, and he rejected it. Dragons were too revered for him to even consider that. Besides, what could betray us? He thought. We live in a remote area and have done nothing to draw attention. The problem was convincing Garrow and Roran to let him keep the dragon. Neither of them would care to have a dragon around. I could raise it in secret. In a month or two, it'll be too large for Garrow to get rid of. Will he accept it? Even if he does, can I get enough food for the dragon while it's hiding? It's no larger than a small cat, but it ate an entire handful of meat. I suppose it'll be able to hunt for itself eventually. But how long until then? Will it be able to survive the cold outside? All the same, he wanted the dragon. The more he thought about it, the surer he was. However things might work out with Garrow, Eragon would do everything he could to protect it. Determined, he fell asleep with the dragon cradled against him. When dawn came, the dragon was sitting atop his bedpost, like an ancient sentinel welcoming the new day. Eragon marveled at its color. He had never seen such a clear, hard blue. Its scales were like hundreds of small gemstones. He noticed that the white oval on his palm, where he had touched the dragon, had a silvery sheen. He hoped he could hide it by keeping his hands dirty. The dragon launched off the post and glided to the floor. Eragon gingerly picked it up and left the quiet home, pausing to grab meat, several leather strips, and as many rags as he could carry. The crisp morning was beautiful. A fresh layer of snow covered the farm. He smiled as the small creature looked around with interest from the safety of his arms. Hurrying across the fields, he walked silently into the dark forest, searching for a safe place for the dragon to stay. Eventually, he found a roaring tree standing alone on a bare knoll. Its branches snow-tipped gray fingers that reached toward the sky. He set the dragon down by the base of the trunk and shook the leather onto the ground. With a few deft movements, he made a noose and slipped it over the dragon's head as it explored the snowy clumps surrounding the tree. The leather was worn, but it would hold. He watched the dragon crawl around, then untied the noose from its neck and fashioned a makeshift harness for its legs so the dragon would not strangle itself. Next, he gathered an armful of sticks and built a crude but high. Okay, I messed up that line. Messed up the chain of events there. Hang on. Okay, let's try this again. Let's give this another go. Next, He gathered an armful of sticks and built a crude hut high in the branches, layering the inside with rags and stashing the meat. Snow fell on his face as the tree swayed. He hung more rags over the front of the shelter to keep heat inside. Pleased, he surveyed his work. "Time to show you your new home," he said, and lifted the dragon up into the branches. It wriggled, trying to get free, then clambered into the hut, where it ate a piece of meat, curled up, and blinked coyly at him. "You'll be fine as long as you stay in here," he instructed. The dragon blinked again. Sure that it had not understood him, Eragon groped with his mind until he felt the dragon's consciousness. Again, he had the terrible feeling of openness, of a space so large it pressed down on him like a heavy blanket. Summoning his strength, he focused on the dragon and tried to impress on it one idea. Stay here. The dragon stopped moving and cocked its head at him. He pushed harder. Stay here. A dim acknowledgement came tentatively through the link, but Eragon wondered if it really understood. After all, it's only an animal. He retreated from the contact with relief and felt the safety of his own mind envelop him. Eragon left the tree, casting glances backward. The dragon stuck its head out of the shelter and watched with large eyes as he left. After a hurried walk home, he sneaked back into his room to dispose of the egg fragments. He was sure Garrow and Roran would not notice the egg's absence. It had faded from their thoughts after they learned it could not be sold. When his family got up, Roran mentioned that he had heard some noises during the night, but to Eragon's relief, did not pursue the issue. Eragon's enthusiasm made the day go by quickly. The mark on his hand proved easy to hide, so he soon stopped worrying about it. Before long, he headed back to the Roran, carrying sausages he had pilfered from the cellar. With apprehension, he approached the tree. Is the dragon able to survive outside in winter? His fears were groundless. The dragon was perched on a branch, gnawing on something between its front legs. It started squeaking excitedly when it saw him. He was pleased to see that it had remained in the tree, above the reach of large predators. As soon as he dropped the sausages at the base of the trunk, the dragon glided down. While it voraciously tore apart the food, Eragon examined the shelter. All the meat he had left was gone, but the hut was intact, and tufts of feathers littered the floor. Good! It can get its own food. It struck him that he did not know if the dragon was a he or a she. He lifted and turned it over, ignoring its squeals of displeasure, but wasn't able to find any distinguishing marks. It seems like it won't give up any secrets without a struggle. He spent a long time with the dragon. He untied it, set it on his shoulder, and went to explore the woods. The snow-laden trees watched over them like solemn pillars of a great cathedral. In that isolation, Eragon showed the dragon what he knew about the forest, not caring if it understood his meaning. It was the simple act of sharing that mattered. He talked to it continuously. The dragon gazed back at him with bright eyes, drinking in his words. For a while he just sat with it, resting in his arms, and watched it with wonder, still stunned by recent events. Eragon started for home at sunset, conscious of two hard blue eyes drilling into his back, indignant at being left behind. That night he brooded about all the things that could happen to this small and unprotected animal. Thoughts of ice storms and vicious animals tormented him. It took hours for him to find sleep. His dreams were foxes and black wolves tearing at the dragon with bloody teeth. In the sunrise glow, Eragon ran from the house with food and scraps of cloth, extra insulation for the shelter. He found the dragon awake and safe, watching the sunrise from high in the tree. He fervently thanked all the gods, known and unknown. The dragon came down to the ground as he approached and leapt into his arms, huddling close to his chest. The cold had not harmed it, but seemed frightened. A puff of dark smoke blew out of its nostrils. He stroked it comfortingly and sat with his back to the roaring, murmuring softly. He kept still as the dragon buried its head in his coat. After a while it crawled out of his embrace and onto his shoulder. He fed it, then wrapped the new rags around the hut. They played together for a time, but Eragon had to return to the house before long. And that's how far into the chapter we're getting today. And next dramatic reading for this book, there will be even more of the chapter where we will finish the chapter. Yeah, it's great. Eragon at first is like, hey, this is an expensive stone. Okay, I can't sell it. What the heck? And now it's like, here's a dragon. And I do like that they're going over, that this is not an easy thing to get this dragon, to raise the dragon. And I like how instant their connection is to one another. Because he's like all night, he's like, oh my gosh, is my dragon going to die? And he's really worried, just races over the first moment he can. And so, yeah, I do like their connection there. And I do like how much already he's willing to give for his dragon. Oh, so cute. When I was reading this chapter, I was honestly sort of thinking about just, getting a pet, like maybe a dog, cat, or a bird, and, dealing with them, the first night. Like, oh, they're so cute. Oh, shit, what I'm going to do. I have 3 birds currently. And so, yeah, so now whenever I read something that sort of slightly hints at like a pet owner relationship, although we will quickly learn that the relationship between rider and dragon is nothing like a pet and owner relationship. But since I do not have a dragon that I can talk with, yeah, and since there are no dragon riders and I can't just, ask them their input or read their books, I'm having to do it the closest thing I can think of, which is a pet owner relationship. So, yeah. So, my question with you for today is, hey, if you got a pet dragon, like no matter the circumstances, somehow you got a pet dragon, what would you do? Actually, scratch that. No matter the circumstances, you get a dragon, and it won't be very safe to raise the dragon. What would you do? Would you do like Eragon and go, okay, I'm going to risk everything for this dragon. I'm going to figure a way this will work? Or will you go, it's just easier to kill this thing? Which one would you do? Please comment below. Let me know your answer to that question, as well as anything else that I read in this video. I would say this chapter, but we have not yet finished this chapter. So remember, comment below, no major spoilers. If you are watching this on the YouTubes, please like this video and comment and subscribe. Subscribing is important because I will be reading the entire Inheritance cycle. So if you like that series and are liking my reading of it so far, subscribe so you don't miss a thing. And if you're watching this on my blog day blog and watching on the desktop version of my blog day blog, please choose the follow by email option so you will never again miss out on anything I do on my blog. I am going to be getting another Game of Thrones long post out soon. Like, I just have to do the cover, editing, and it will be out. So keep track of that. And I was expecting that cover like maybe halfway through this video to come down, and it didn't come down, so. And until next video, goodbye. Okay, I forgot there's like 2 clicks to end the videos now. Bye!